If you've ever felt the pressure to buy something because the website said there were just two left at that price, or because the sale was ending soon, you've experienced just two of the many techniques using neuroscience to advertise online. Today's guest is Roger Dooley. Roger is an author and international speaker. His books include Friction, one of the best business books of 2019, and Brainfluence, now in 11 languages. He writes the popular Neuromarketing blog and Brainy Marketing at Forbes.com. He co-founded College Confidential, the leading college-bound website, and led strategy at a Fortune 1000 company. I'm your host, Chris Parker, and this is the Easy Prey Podcast. Roger, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey Podcast today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Chris.
I'm so excited to be able to talk to you. Can you give me a little background about how you got involved in marketing?
Probably my earliest exposure was way back in engineering school when, oddly enough, I minored in psychology and took a psychology of persuasion class focused on advertising. But I pretty much set that aside for years, worked as an engineer, worked in then product management and corporate strategy, found my way back into the marketing field in a big way when I bailed out of the corporate world to co-found a direct marketing business in the early days of home computers. And that really acquainted me with a lot of marketing and really taught me some of the techniques I'm still using today in terms of testing and evaluating results and trying to take as quantitative an approach to marketing as possible. But about 15 years or so ago, I saw two areas coming together, neuroscience and marketing. I wasn't the only person to see that. There were already some early neuromarketing startups out there. But I began writing about it and got a little bit of traction, focused more on that. And I've been writing about that space ever since. And over time, I changed a little bit from a more neuroscience-oriented approach to also incorporating behavioral science and psychology, not only because I've always found those fields interesting, but because those tools are really more commonly used by brands, and they're much more accessible to smaller scale businesses too.
So what is, how do you define like neuromarketing and that kind of concept? Because I think for me, I've done some marketing over the years, so I'm a little more tied in with that. But someone who's not involved in the marketing space, neuromarketing, what the heck is that?
Well, my personal definition is any use of our understanding of how our brains work to market better. That's a little bit broader definition than some would use. Others would sort of equate it with what's been called consumer neuroscience, using tools like EEG or fMRI, or maybe biometric measurements to evaluate how people respond to ads or other kinds of marketing. But I prefer the all-encompassing approach because really I think you need to understand the continuum, for one, and also because until recently, those neuroscience tools have only been available to big brands. A BMW or a Coca-Cola could run neuromarketing studies on their Super Bowl ad, but even fairly sizable businesses could not afford to try and answer many, if any, questions using those kinds of tools. Whereas any scale business can use behavioral science to do a better job for their customers.
So on a broad level, is this kind of a more sophisticated way of adding urgency?
Well, urgency.
Yeah, because that's one of those classic sales techniques. The sale's going to end, in 5 minutes.
Right. Well, actually, that is one of many techniques that are based on psychology and behavioral science. Just about a week or so ago, I dropped on my podcast an interview with Robert Cialdini, the author of the classic book Influence, Psychology of Persuasion, and he's just out with a new edition that added a seventh principle. The seventh principle's been out there for a bit, but now the new Influence incorporates all seven principles. And these are fundamental for any understanding of how to use psychology and marketing. And one of those seven principles is scarcity, that we only have two left. And there is a huge amount of science that shows when something is scarce, that thing becomes more desirable. And with the two things can be identical, but if one is scarce and the other isn't, the scarce one seems better. And this is also related to urgency and fear of missing out, because people are loss averse. It's a fundamental principle that was found by Kahneman and Tversky years ago. Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for the effort. And When you combine scarcity and loss aversion, you've got a very potent tool there to influence our behavior. That's why when you go to a travel site, like perhaps an airline or an Expedia or someplace like that, you will see these cues for scarcity. There's only 2 hotel rooms left at this price, and 20 people are looking at this right now. So this hotel right now, they're not saying they're looking at your particular room, but they're telling you this to create that sense of scarcity and add the urgency. Another Cialdini principle is social proof, which is when you see other people doing something, you're more likely to do it yourself. That's why if you're advertising your product, you'll say you've got 10,000 satisfied users or 1 million customers, because that'll give people a comfort saying, well, other people are doing this, so it's got to be okay. You see these same travel sites saying, 43 people have booked this hotel in the last 24 hours. Then that's showing, okay, wow, a lot of people are actually booking this hotel, adding social proof. And if you want to see an interesting use of these various tools of behavioral science, I think many of these travel sites, whether they're an airline or a consolidator, are excellent examples because they employ behavioral psychologists to work on these tools. They employ extensive testing. They will A/B test stuff. I'm sure that if you see that only 2 rooms left at this price, that's because 2 rooms left tested better than 1 room or 3 rooms. And some of the tricks they use. Now, you see, to me, there's nothing wrong with scarcity. If you go to Amazon, sometimes you will see only 3 of these left in stock. More are on the way. To me, that is a very legitimate use of scarcity. It's telling you that, hey, there aren't many left. They put that in big colored type, by the way, because they understand that's going to be a little more effective in selling. But it's honest, at least I believe it's honest, that they really only have 3 on the shelf. There are more coming. And that tells me that, okay, if I want this really badly, really quickly, maybe I should order sooner rather than later. But where you see false scarcity is in those travel sites. One of the tools or techniques they reportedly use is they carefully word it. There are only 2 rooms left at this price. Now, does that mean that when those 2 rooms are gone, the price is going to go up 10%, or will it only go up $1 or 50 cents? Who knows?
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of a gray area. If there's going to be a legitimate, significant price increase when those 2 rooms are gone, then that's a very ethical, valid use of scarcity. If it is a false scarcity, then that's not so clear cut. Now, they can say that we're technically being honest. And an even more blatant example I've seen, occasionally on websites I've visited, you will see big sale, prices expire at midnight tonight. And you say, wow, we really better, these prices are great. They're half off, better make a decision. And then you go back the next day and the same big sale is on and the prices still expire at midnight. And so to me, that is totally unethical. And, when you talk to anybody, whether it's Robert Cialdini or even, say, the late Zig Ziglar, who was the sales guru that taught salespeople many of these closing techniques that we hear about, they all emphasize that it is important to use these tools in a way that benefits the customer, that is not harmful to them, that's not deceptive, that is ethical. And in fact, Zig Ziglar said that your most important tool for persuasion is your own integrity. And to me, that is a key lesson from him. Even though he taught salespeople 20 ways to close an order, he still emphasized that your integrity is what counts. And he really believed, I think, when he was selling somebody, he started off selling cookware of all things, these expensive cookware sets. And one sale was to a woman who did not have a lot of financial resources. She did not live in a very nice place. And she bought this multi-$100 set of cookware that clearly she did not really need. But it gave her a sense of pride and fulfillment. She could bring her neighbors in for a meal. They could see this cookware. So at least in Zig's mind, this was an ethical sale. He wasn't taking advantage of a woman who couldn't afford a product just so he could get a commission. He was getting her to a better place. May not be everybody else's definition of what that better place would be, but for her it was. So, to me, if you're getting your customer to a better place, then any technique like those things that we talked about, or any technique like that is fine.
It's funny. It reminds me of a story. I used to, back in the early days before the internet, if there was such a time, I worked for a mail order computer reseller. So, you get the magazine monthly in the mail and, buy your computer over the phone. And this lady called in and, hey, I want the new, whiz-bang 8000. It was a pretty expensive computer. And for me, I always like, well, so what do you plan on using it for? Well, I just, I'm going to use it for this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, you don't need the whiz-bang 8000. Just get the whiz-bang 2000. We'll save you $1,000 by doing that. And so I, shipped out the order. And as soon as I got off the phone, the sales manager came up to me and was like, what is wrong with you? She was going to buy a computer $1,000 more than what you sold her. I'm like, well, she didn't need it. Like, that's not, talking about the integrity. It was like, I don't feel comfortable selling something that is way more than the customer needed. And the funny thing, and he was upset with me about that because it was like, hey, you're leaving money on the table. A few months later, some economic downturn happened. And what I started noticing is that a lot of my customers were calling me back and saying, hey, you recommended me for this cheaper computer. I need a printer now. What do you think I should get? So while the rest of the guys are sitting around twiddling their thumbs, waiting for somebody to call in, I had my customers calling back because they trusted me. Because they're like, hey, you told me what I actually needed to buy, not what the big flashy, computer on the cover of the magazine was.
Well, Chris, I think that is an excellent example of an ethical sale because that leads to repeat business. That's something that, again, Zig Ziglar, going back to the ultimate salesperson of all time, that's what he was striving for. He was looking for loyal customers who would trust him. And the next time they wanted something, they would come back. Where if you make that big sale and then 48 hours later, the customer's saying, man, did I do the right thing? I think he kind of pressured me into getting that expensive thing. Then, that's not how you build a long-term relationship. If you look at car salespeople as examples too, those that have those repeat customers, they use a lot of techniques, but one of those is to understand what the customer wants and needs and sell them that, not something that is going to make them an extra commission on that particular day, but the customer is going to regret later on. And also one fun fact, Chris, I got my direct marketing start in the computer business as well.
Hey,
back in those days when there was Computer Shopper magazine that if you carried on an airplane, it was counted as checked luggage. It was so big. And so, yeah, those were the days.
I remember the Computer Shopper magazine. Those were, well, it wasn't really a magazine. It was a book.
Yeah, it was like a folio-sized telephone book that was like really unlike anything else on the periodical shelf. You needed two hands to carry it practically. And every page in there was, 97% of the pages were paid ads. They had the least editorial content of any magazine I've ever seen, but people were desperate to advertise in there.
Yep, because it was distributed everywhere.
And that was a place to go. I mean, if you were going to buy a computer product, what'd you do? You went out and you spent a few bucks on a Computer Shopper because you could see, 100 different vendors in there and compare prices. And it was kind of a brutal market because, customers could just go from page to page and see who was cheaper. But that's how computers were sold in those days.
Yeah, almost a commodity. So how, from a consumer perspective, how can we tell when someone is employing these non-conscious persuasion techniques and influence to our benefit, or if it's to their benefit? Is there a way as a consumer to tell which way it's pushing?
No, I think that probably the first thing to do is just be aware that the technique is being used. At that point, then you can make a determination whether it's probably legitimate or not. We've talked about scarcity, loss aversion as things that we see an awful lot of. A couple of other common techniques that are used. One is reciprocation. If I do something for you, then you are more likely to do something for me. Especially reciprocation doesn't involve a quid pro quo. Like, I'll give you this thing if you give me that thing. It's like, hey, Chris, here, I'm going to give you this, or I'm going to do this for you. And then at that point, you'll be much more likely to grant a later favor. Mm-hmm. So one example that isn't necessarily unethical, but it's maybe a little bit manipulative, are these mailing labels that charities used to send. Now, I don't see as many as I used to because people don't send that much mail. but you would get a big envelope of personalized return address labels from some charity, and they would say, hey, these are yours to keep. But if you'd like to make a donation, here's the envelope that you can use. And the reason they did that was they were employing reciprocation, and they were sophisticated direct marketers. Some of these places had like giant buildings full of marketing people, and they found that worked better than just sending out a straight pitch for, hey, here's our cause, here's the people we're trying to support, donate some money. And even though these mailing pieces were very expensive and probably still 1 out of 50 actually resulted in a donation, it was profitable for them to do that. So, I mean, that's one example. Another example, well, we talked about social proof. When people give examples of other customers using their product, you want to look at those and just evaluate them for how legitimate they appear to be. Sometimes you'll see the sort of anonymous testimonials.
Nancy M.
Right, yeah. And maybe even like a location in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Who knows if that's real or not? Or sort of vague testimonials, used by millions or something. These things, I think, they may be legitimate, they may not, but you want to look at those carefully. Authority is another one where if you have a recommendation from an authority that something is a good thing to do, somebody that is an expert in the space, that is a trusted person in a particular space, then you will be more likely to find whatever the pitch is believable. So, if LeBron James says these are the best basketball shoes I've ever owned, then okay, he's an authority on basketball shoes. Now, you may want to step back and say, are his needs as a basketball player different than my needs? Does he have size 17 feet or so? I actually have no idea, that really don't relate much to my feet, and so on. And is he getting paid millions of dollars to make this endorsement? So you can look at that, but I mean, at least that's, you should just be aware that this is taking place. And still, if you find him to be a credible authority on basketball shoes and you're really into basketball, then hey, it's probably okay. You'll see people recommending stuff outside their space. You'll see people recommending healthcare products that are wearing a white lab coat, that are not actual doctors. Or lately with the pandemic, we've seen people who identify as doctors making health recommendations, often about rather sketchy things that the COVID isn't real, or use this strange treatment, herbal treatment, and it'll help you or cure you. And if you really dig and say, well, does this person they may be a doctor. Are they an MD to begin with? If they're an MD, do they have any training in epidemiology or viruses? Or, you get people who are, they're an ophthalmologist or something, and they are making recommendations about treatment for viral infections. So, you really have to look at any authority cues and evaluate how trustworthy are they, and also whether they have any kind of vested interest in whatever it is they're promoting.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always tell people is, whether it's politics or sales or whatever, is follow the money. Who's financially benefiting from this transaction?
Yeah, and I think that there are certainly celebrities who do have standards. They will not put their name on a product that they don't believe in or that they don't trust. I don't think LeBron James would find, even for a very huge fee from some really sketchy sneaker company, put his endorsement on it. I don't think he needs money that bad. He would say, no, thank you. And they would have to settle for maybe, a B-list celebrity basketball player or something.
So what are some of these other techniques that are used to kind of influence or manipulate us?
Well, I think one area that I've been focused on in recent few years is the area of friction, which I define as any unnecessary effort to perform a task. And where that works in marketing is if you make something easier for customers to do, they will likely do that thing. If you make something more difficult, they're less likely to do that thing. Now, in general, friction reduction is a good thing. Amazon has focused on friction since its earliest days. Back in 1997,
Wow.
Jeff Bezos was talking about frictionless shopping. People are still trying to figure out what's this commerce thing, and he was already saying, okay, this can be frictionless if we do it right. In 1998, they patented one-click ordering, and that was such an unusual patent at the time because it seemed so simple and obvious. A lot of companies said, well, you can't patent something that simple. You just, it's clicks, somebody buys something. What's what's unusual about that? They defended that when Barnes & Noble implemented something similar. They went to court, spent millions of dollars and years in court. They won. They kept their patent. Now, here's the crazy thing. What did they get for all that money and all that effort? What level of effort, extra effort, did they impose on their competition? One little click. Barnes & Noble had to add one click to their checkout process. Confirm order. They'll say they're buy now and then confirm order. But that one tiny little effort reduction was worth millions of dollars to Jeff Bezos and Amazon. So this is how powerful that effect can be. And any marketer that's trying to create a better customer experience can focus on that, and chances are they will do better. There are ways to misuse friction. I'm recalling, I believe LinkedIn has phased out this particular approach, but LinkedIn wanted people to expand their networks, in particular to invite people into their network. And at one point, whenever you added somebody to your network, they would say, hey, would you like us to email the people you are connected with that aren't yet on LinkedIn? And, on the face of it, it's, well, I don't know, maybe. But if you think about it for a second, you realize what they're going to do is take every address from your Gmail account and spam these people with invitations to join LinkedIn. Now, this is a great way to grow a social site. It worked very well for WhatsApp. That's why they became worth $25 billion after, just a few years in business and really no profit to speak of, no profit at all, and very, very little revenue to speak of. But that is also perhaps a negative because suddenly your contacts are getting this spam that you inadvertently introduced them to. Well, one way that LinkedIn reduced friction for that approach was they showed you this prompt every time you made some kind of a change to your network. And, if you were multitasking, you're on the phone, you're clicking, oh, I'll add that contact, see this okay, or continue, there's like a continue button.
Yeah.
I avoided that for probably 100 times. Then like on time 101, I was distracted and I said, continue. Okay, get rid of that little screen, hit continue. And there's like, oh crap. I just invited all my friends to LinkedIn. And so, these kind of deceptive continue buttons, next buttons are one way where something is very low friction that maybe induces somebody to do something they did not expect to do. LinkedIn, to my knowledge, has stopped that practice now, by the way. But certainly you see those kinds of things in use everywhere. And you can also manipulate friction in another way. I am a big fan of the Wall Street Journal. I like their reporting. They're one of the few news organizations that does a lot of original reporting and high quality reporting. But they also apparently understand behavioral science because I found that when you subscribe to one of their promotion offers, it's very simple. You can just click subscribe now and put in your email address or whatever, and bingo, you're set. Now you have to give me your credit card information, and they let you know we will automatically renew at the end of your $1 for 3 months deal or free deal or whatever it is. So I mean, a legitimate way to reduce startup friction is to give somebody either a free deal or a very low cost deal to induce them to subscribe. And that's great. I mean, it lets the person sample it, determine if they like the product or not, without making a big or long-term commitment. But what the Wall Street Journal does, or at least did last time I checked this out, when I set, in this first instance, I set a timer on my calendar saying, okay, my 90 days is going to be up then. So on like day 88, I put a note to turn off auto renew. So when that day rolled around, I went onto the site and said, okay, I'll turn off auto renew. And there's an auto renew toggle, like a little toggle switch on their website, but it was grayed out. and there's a more info button next to it. Okay, that opens up a pop-up that says that if you want to renew now, you can do that or do nothing, and it'll automatically renew. If you want to renew now, there was a link to click. If you want to turn off auto renew, then you can call our customer service number. That's it. Call a customer service number. Okay, and this is a little pop-up now. So what that forces the user to do is first be proactive like I was to set that reminder. Secondly, to hunt down elsewhere on their website, their customer service number, then to call in, listen to a lengthy 9-item voice menu, maybe wait in queue for a while, get to a first representative who you explain what you want, says, oh, you want to turn off auto renew. Sorry, I can't do that. You need to talk to somebody else. They dump you into yet another queue where you may wait for a while. And then finally, another person tries to make you additional offers so that you don't turn off auto renew. Now, to me, this is getting into a dark patterns area where you're making it so challenging that probably some subscribers are simply going to give up partway through and say, well, I kind of like it. I'm still reading it, so I'll just let it renew. Or I can't deal with this now. I'll get back to it tomorrow, and then forget about it. And to me, if I see nothing wrong with making ridiculously simple and easy trial offers and cheap trial offers or free trial offers, but please, make it easy enough. If a person has tried it and says, "Okay, I don't want to continue this at full price," make it easy to do. And I've seen some magazine subscription offers that are just like that. You get an email saying, "Hey, if you've enjoyed your trial offer that was like $2 for a year, you're going to renew in 3 weeks. If you don't want to renew, click this link," and it takes you right to a link where it says, "Don't want to renew," and you click it, and they say thank you. Now, to me, that is far more ethical, and I feel much better about dealing with that vendor whenever I deal with somebody who makes it very difficult to cancel subscription or to return a product where you have to do things during certain hours of the day and get numbers and maybe jump through multiple hoops. That is all designed to slow down the process and create friction and reduce the number of returns. And I guarantee that does reduce the number of returns. The more difficult you make it to return something, people will miss the deadline. They'll just say it's too much trouble to find packaging. Amazon does what is amazing for any mail order company. If you were in the mail order company business, direct marketing business, that returns are horrible things.
Yes.
You can't sell a product. They cut into your margins. They waste your time. But Amazon makes it incredibly easy to return stuff. You can get a return authorization in a few seconds right online. Just with no effort, you can take your unpackaged bare product into a UPS store or a Whole Foods or a Kohl's with your phone and barcode from your email, and they'll pack it up and ship it for you. This is incredibly expensive for Amazon, but it's why they have such incredible customer loyalty.
Well, in addition to that, I'm trying to think. I generally am pretty good about what I buy from Amazon and knowing, am I going to get something that's low quality? I know I'm going to get something that's low quality, and I'm prepared for that. There's a number of things that I've bought over the years from Amazon when I decided fairly inexpensive. This isn't what I thought it was going to be, and I want to return it. And they say, "Thank you, we've refunded it. Don't even bother returning the product." I'm like, how could, I'm thinking to myself, well, how could that possibly, they're losing money. They're not getting the product back. But then I started to think, well, I've got, it's got to get put in a box, whether I'm paying it for or they're paying for it. They're going to end up paying the shipping. It's going to go to the receiving department. Someone's got to open up that box, make sure it's the right product. And I started thinking, wow, for a $5 item, it's probably just, like you said, easier, no friction process. Just say, here's your $5 back. Have a nice day.
Right. Well, exactly. And there's another element to that, too, that I think is interesting. It's showing they trust you, Chris, because we were talking about reciprocation. Trust is reciprocated. If I show that I trust you in some way, you're more likely to trust me. In fact, there's the famous con artist trick of the found money, where somehow somebody says, "Hey, I just found this wallet on the street. I want to find the owner. Can you hold it?" And it's got money in it. Well, I look for the owner. And so you stand there, okay. And they come back and say, nah, I couldn't find the owner. And somehow then they segue into getting you to withdraw some money from your bank account, but they trusted you with that wallet. So now you trust them. And Amazon isn't doing it in a negative way to manipulate your trust, but that's why people trust Amazon. Another way Amazon shows trust is when you return something. You pack it up in a box maybe, and you drop it off at FedEx or UPS or wherever you arrange to drop it off. They may credit you as soon as that package gets scanned. Now, they don't know what you returned. It could be nothing in the box. It could be, a brick. Who knows? But they are showing, Roger, I trust you. And for me, that engenders great trust. Now, if you abuse that trust, like if now every time you had bought a $5 item, you called up and said, oh, yeah, I'm going to return this. Probably by, second or third time you did that, they'd say, okay, here's your RMA, go for it, buddy. But, as long as you are showing yourself to be trustworthy, they will extend trust to you.
Yeah. And then as I was saying that, I'm like, oh, this is reciprocity. They're making me, have a good experience that they can, leverage later, or not leverage in a bad way, but that they can use that good experience to deal with a potential bad experience in the future.
Well, sure, because even if they said, okay, take that $5 item and send it back to us, no questions asked, and they were very nice about it and, forthcoming, it would still be a bad experience because you would have to go someplace to return a $5 item that for some reason wasn't right, and so they're taking what for you would have been a negative experience with that return and turning it into a positive experience. And sometimes maybe the return item is still usable in some way. You ordered a certain type of pen and they sent you the wrong pen. Well, the pens they sent you, maybe you can still use, not for the purpose you wanted, but you can use them for something. And so they're scoring these reciprocity points with you. At the same time, they're reducing their costs. So to me, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I was, and it's also just, for them, it's also a cost savings. It's like a win-win for them. We've built the reciprocity and we don't have to deal with the return item that's going to cost us more than $5 to process.
Right, exactly. But there are definitely companies out there, Chris, who don't feel that way. They have the mentality that if we let our customers get away with something once, they're going to take advantage of us. Maybe one time somebody did take advantage of them, and it's like now they have rules in place to prevent that from ever happening again. But what they're doing is they're penalizing the 99% of their customers that are perfectly honest, for the bad behavior of one customer 5 years ago, but nobody's ever re-examined that process to say, do we still need this process? Did this process ever make sense in the first place?
Yeah. Do you see mail-in rebates as kind of being that a high friction type of thing? You say, oh, the product's $99, but you get a $50 mail-in rebate. So in your mind, it's now a $50 product. But when you see what you have to do to get your money back, it's like, I have to send it in a blue envelope and it has to be postmarked on a Tuesday.
Yes, I think that is one way that those things can be sort of abused, if you will. I have seen fewer of those offers lately. Lately, if there is some kind of a rebate, it can be applied pretty much automatically during checkout or some other way. But for a while, that was a very popular thing to do. Yes, we'll give you this big amount off, but you have to send in a copy of your receipt in a certain time frame, and the numbers of unredeemed rebates were huge. In fact, we were talking about my start in home computing. It was triggered by Texas Instruments offering a $100 rebate on a $300 computer. So, this was years ago when $100 was worth even more than it is today. Even today, $100 is nothing to sneeze at for a rebate. And even then, it was both high in absolute magnitude and high in a percentage of the purchase cost. But my contact in their corporate structure would never tell me how many unclaimed rebates they had. But I gathered it was a huge percentage. They sold millions of these computers, and many of those rebates were unclaimed. So undoubtedly, it was, tens of millions of dollars of value, 100 million, who knows, but a huge sum of money. Now, the laws on what happens to that money may vary. So maybe they didn't get to keep it all. I don't know, but definitely that's one way to use rebates in a negative way. And thankfully, though, those high friction rebates are mostly a thing of the past in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the last time I saw one. It's been years since I can remember seeing one.
Well, I think that companies are increasingly focusing on customer experience, not on, gee, how can we add a few bucks to our margin if we do this right, make things a little less convenient for the customer. And that was one of those things that I'm sure created negative sentiment. If they did any kind of polling of their customers, they would find that their customers did not like those kinds of rebates, that they had to hunt down an envelope and mail in or scan perhaps and email it in, which how many people even today know how to scan stuff properly and attach that scanned document to their email, or even can even find that scanned document.
Or better yet, you have to cut off the UPC code off the box and mail it in.
Right, which you discarded the other day.
which you discarded 30 seconds after you got the product.
Right, yeah.
So are there any other big red flag persuasion techniques that we've missed discussing so far?
Well, there probably are. I think that humans are full of biases, and these are sort of non-conscious drivers of behavior that we aren't aware of. And we would, if somebody said, well, this is influencing you in a certain way, we'd say, no, it's not true. But it is. We talked about loss aversion. When you express the exact same deal to somebody as a loss or a gain, in other words, I'm going to give you $50 and take $10 away versus I'm going to give you $40. Somehow that loss of $10 looms bigger than the gain. And so when you see these deals that suggest that you're going to miss an opportunity, that is preying on loss aversion. There are some other things, anchoring. If you want to see some examples of both clever marketing and effective marketing, but also maybe occasionally borderline, I wouldn't call it deceptive, but manipulative marketing. If you look at infomercials, they use a whole sequence of techniques, and they're practically like a master class in influence marketing because they'll do the things like how many of these have been sold. Thousands sold. They'll tell you thousands sold at $500. Okay. That is what's called anchoring. They are setting an anchor price at the beginning. You can be pretty sure that down the road, whatever they're going to ask you to buy is not going to cost you $500. It's going to be less. But they've set that thousands of people, millions of people paid $500 for this thing. So that's really what it's worth. In fact, some research by Dan Ariely showed that simply introducing a larger random number caused people to assign a higher value to something. One example that comes to mind is computer keyboards, which nobody buys keyboards very freely. If you buy one keyboard in 5 years, it's probably unless you're in the procurement office of a large company or something. So it's something that nobody knows how much it costs, but you don't know what the quality is. And so it had people estimate the price of a computer keyboard. And before asking them, he said, okay, write down the last 2 digits of your social security number on a piece of paper. Now, clearly, your last 2 social digits have nothing to do with the price of keyboards. But there was a progression for people whose numbers fell between 0 and 19. So the first 20 numbers, they had the lowest estimate of the keyboard price. On the way up to the people whose socials fell between 80 and 99, they had the highest price by like a factor of 2 or 3 for the keyboard. So, when you see an infomercial start throwing up these prices, then they say, now here's what you're really going to pay. And it isn't just infomercials. You'll see that on websites, compare at $500. And something to, there's another technique called decoy marketing that I see a lot of, particularly, these days. Many, many things are sold as subscriptions. You can't just buy a product anymore. You subscribe to the product. And often there are various levels of subscription. There's the sort of basic or maybe even the free version, which is not too effective, but it's free. Then you've got the basic version, then the pro version, and finally the enterprise or the ultra version of the product. Now, the one they probably want you to buy is the Pro version, the middle one. So they'll do a few things. They may present those in reverse order. First of all, they'll put the Enterprise or Ultra version with the highest price first. So that sets the anchor up at a very high value for you. They will emphasize the one that they want you to buy, the Pro version, if you want to call it that, the medium version, with making it a distinctive color, making that box a little bit bigger and stand out, and maybe flag it as most popular, add a little bit of social proof to that. And they, the decoy marketing aspect comes in when that Ultra product, the Enterprise product, they may expect to sell 0 of those. But there is research showing that if you've got, say, 2 products, say a good product and a better product, and maybe you're selling half and half of each, and you want to up your sales mix of the better product because that's more profitable, higher revenue, higher margin, what you can do is add an even better product. So now you've got a good, better, and best product. And the best product can be quite expensive. And what research shows is you will sell more now of the product that is now the middle product because it's the compromise. It's the version that, well, this is probably what most people would buy. It's not the cheapest. It's not the best. And the only thing you've done is introduced a higher priced product that you may sell 0 of. And if you actually sell some of that, so much the better. But this is one form of decoy marketing. There are other kinds too, but a little bit less commonly used.
That's really interesting. Like, as you're talking about these things, I'm thinking of websites I've been at, stores I've been at, where I've seen these sort of techniques played out. So I think it's one of those things that you really have to think of, what is it that I'm really needing to buy? What services fulfill my needs versus what's in the, not that you're thinking what's the middle option, but trying to really think out, which service level really meets my needs?
Right. And one other common decoy approach is to have an upgraded product for the same price or almost the same price. So like, for $1 more, you can get the better version of this product, or even the same price on this sale today. This is from research by Dan Ariely, whose book, Predictably Irrational, by the way. It's a classic now. It's been out probably for 10 years or something. I'm not sure, maybe longer. But excellent book. And your brain makes this comparison of, we've got this product. Wow, this product is better, and it's the same price or just a little bit better. And it will dramatically shift preference to the better product.
So all the ways that the way our brains are wired that can be just nudge us.
Yep, it's there's so many, and I think the main thing that people can do is to sort of step back and be aware of what you're seeing. Look for things that might be manipulative, whether it's testimonials, prices, sale prices, limited quantities, limited duration sales, all these things. And you just make a judgment as to whether they seem legitimate or maybe are manipulative.
Yeah, and I think that's always going to be the hard call to make, is to know, are there really 2 left, or are they just trying to get me to buy it today? And if so, is that really, if I was going to plan on staying there anyway, does it matter?
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because ultimately, I was thinking, I've always seen that on hotel sites. There's always 2 rooms left or whatever, or airline tickets. I don't know that I've ever gone, well, let me book that right now because there's only 2 left. I've definitely thought, I hope those 2 are left when it comes time for me to book. But I don't know that. Gosh, now I have to think about it when I do stuff and see, is this really influencing me to make purchases differently?
Well, I guarantee you that that does influence some people, because first, there are some people who are very cost sensitive and they don't know what the new price is going to be. So, and none of us knows. For some of us, we may be a little bit less price sensitive. If it's a business trip and it's just me and, there's 2 seats left, I say, well, okay, I'm not going to worry about it that much. If, say I'm booking a personal trip and I'm needing 2 tickets and there's only 2 left, I'm thinking, well, okay, suddenly am I going to be buying 2 tickets at a much higher price? And, is there going to be an issue with getting on the same flight even? Then that does move me to action, I think, sometimes. If everything else is aligned properly.
So I have one question that's maybe off topic for you, but I want to ask because of my audience. Do you see more of an AI influence coming into marketing and kind of working underneath all these things, where even the marketers don't even really know how these things are being, modified, so to speak?
I don't know if I see it directly or if I saw it, if I would recognize it as such right now anyway. But I do think that that will be happening, and probably is already happening in certain ways, simply to better target personalized offers. Because one of the, like, I don't mind personalized ads or personalized offers from companies like Amazon. Generally, these things are based on their knowledge of the kind of stuff I buy. But at the same time, it sometimes drives me crazy when I was looking for a suitcase, I bought a suitcase, and now for the next 60 days, I'm seeing suitcase ads everywhere. To me, that's the sort of thing that AI and machine learning might be able to cure, where they say, okay, in this product category, this customer is not buying this frequently, so he's not, like a luggage buyer per se. Maybe this one purchase will mean that he's done for 6 months or 12 months. And we don't have to keep targeting him with those ads. We'll target him with stuff that he's more likely to buy because he's still shopping for it, because we understand that behavior. And I do think, the big tech companies are making huge investments in AI. Google is, Amazon is, Apple is, Facebook is. And they are all, one of the things that they'll be doing with this is trying to market better, understand their consumers better, in part to create a better consumer experience, and in part probably to be more successful in meeting whatever their business objectives are, whether it's getting more orders, increasing users' time on site, and such.
Yeah, what I always worry about is, like, how these systems are trained. I look at like YouTube and Facebook in terms of, if I watch a video, they're going to make suggestions of other videos in that category. Yeah, hey, if you liked watching this video, you might like this other video. But they tend to skew towards more and more outlandish, dramatic, and, like, those are the things that kind of scare me about AI, is that it's pushing in a way that's maybe outside of where people would normally go.
Well, I think what they do is, first of all, they look at your preferences, which, okay, you watch this cat video, then, okay, Chris likes cat videos, we'll show him some more cat videos. But also there's a secondary factor that they've determined is that certain cat videos get more engagement than others. And it's okay, I guess, if it's cat videos, but we saw in the last big political season that the stuff that got most engagement was the more outrageous content with political things that were inflammatory. And engagement is a good thing. Along the way in my entrepreneurial career, I built a big community called College Confidential. It became the biggest website in the college admission space. Sold that to the Daily Mail Group back 10 plus years ago now, so I'm not involved with it anymore. But one of my metrics for success was how long were people staying on the site? Because I knew that if we were doing things right, people would spend time there. If people hit the site and bounced, we were doing something wrong. So in that respect, my objectives and Facebook's objectives were very similar. But the problem is when you sort of weaponize that sort of engagement, and you're saying, okay, this person saw this thing about voter fraud, so we're going to feed him this other thing about voter fraud that got a ton of attention and shares, and it ends up being a loop. So it is an issue, and I'm hoping that there's a cure for this. That the AI can be more transparent, and I think that you have to go back and correct when you see, okay, the AI is coming up with this kind of solution. You rewrite the rules a little bit so that you avoid some of the negative consequences. But you've got to have the focus on that. You can't just say, wow, engagement numbers are up again month after month, and say that's a wonderful thing. You need to be doing some quality control on what that engagement means, how it's affecting people. And one of the things that I worried about, even in my forum days, community days, was the possibility of too much engagement. If people were so engaged with the site that they were ignoring their priorities, like if you've got high school seniors who are supposed to be working on their college essays, and instead they're spending 3 hours on College Confidential, just sort of chit-chatting and reading other people's posts and wasting time, then that's not, you're getting high engagement. That's not a good outcome. And I think, by and large, it was a fantastic tool. And I know that over the years, I got many, many emails from people saying, "Oh, I got into my dream school. Never could have done it without your site." But, even then, this over-engagement thing was on our minds. We didn't have a way of estimating it or combating it really, but we did think about it a little bit.
And that's good, because you're really trying to think what's in the best interest of my demographic, my target audience, and it's not about me manipulating for my little metric of time on site.
Mm-hmm. We did actually have a few of our members who said, "Gee, I would like you to ban my account because I'm spending too much time here," which of course we did. But I mean, they recognized that they were wasting their time, and we did that, and they could not use the site anymore. And had they contacted us and said, "Okay, hey, now can you unban us?" we would have done that too. But that's okay. It's just, I think the AI piece does have to be controlled, because no metric can just be optimized indefinitely before some kind of negative consequence results. I mean, weight loss is a good thing if you're overweight, but it reaches a point where, okay, now it's an eating disorder.
Well, and I assume the same sort of thing can happen with reducing friction. At some point, if you're making it, I don't want to say too easy for people to buy the product, then you start having to deal with returns that you wouldn't have had to do if there wasn't at least some minimal amount of friction.
Yes. And, I think that's something that companies can use, and perhaps even AI can help with, is identifying those situations where if you do have a high return rate on a product or a category, instead of just having a one-click to buy button, like the typical Amazon situation, you need to dig into, well, why are people returning this? And maybe it's something that's wrong in the description or the size or something, whatever. Or maybe it's that people don't quite understand what they're getting into. And in that case, I've seen companies add a step saying, "Okay, great, glad you want to buy. Here's what you'll be getting, or here's what's going to happen next." And yes, that will reduce the conversion rate when you add that step in there. But if it reduces the conversion a little bit, but at the same time increases customer satisfaction and reduces returns or unhappy customers, then that's a good thing. So adding friction in the right place can be a good thing.
Almost kind of like keeping someone in their lanes.
Yeah. If and again, the numbers should tell you that. If you see that you've got problems with people converting, you're getting great conversions, but customers aren't happy, then maybe you're not explaining the product right. Maybe you need to either explain better or slow down the conversion process or something. And I've seen companies do that, where they go back and slow people down, make them think a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And sometimes that's what we need as consumers to do. We need to take a breath, relax, slow down, and then make a decision.
Right. And I've done that too. Like where I'm saying, "Oh, I'm going to make this expensive purchase." I've said, "Okay, I'm going to just bookmark this. I'll come back tomorrow and see if it still appeals to me." And like most of the time, if it was something that I wanted and needed, I do make the purchase. But I try and give myself that breathing room to not make an impulse decision for a large sum of money that I'm going to look at. Well, yeah, I like this product. Did I absolutely need it? No. Is it the best one? I didn't really spend enough time shopping.
Well, that's one of the things my wife and I have always done with a car purchase. Is we'll go in, look at it. Oh, I really like that one, and the sales rep will hate it because it's like, nope, I made a decision not to buy it today, but if I still want it tomorrow, I'll come back tomorrow. And they're like, no, get it now.
Right, the price, because this price is only good for the next hour, and it's the last one on the lot. And I had another buyer looking at that earlier today. Yeah, car salespeople have been the worst about this, and they also do friction reduction. Have you ever seen a car salesperson hand you the order form and say, "Okay, just go ahead and fill out this info"? No, they don't do that. They say, I'll fill this out for you," because they want you to just sit there sipping your coffee or your soda while they do the hard work, and then say, "Okay, all you need to do is sign right here."
Yep. Hand me your driver's license, and I will fill out all the paperwork for you.
Right.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So your books are Friction, that's your newest one, and Brainfluence, which has been around, since 2000? That one's been around quite a while. 2011.
Yeah.
Wow.
Coming up on 10 years.
If people want to find you on social media, if they want to read more about what you write, how can they find you?
Well, the best jumping off point overall is rogerdooley.com, where I've got my podcast episodes. I've got links to my neuromarketing blog, my Forbes blog, my social media stuff. I am most active on Twitter, where I'm at Roger Dooley, and on LinkedIn, I'm easy to find, where I am simply Roger Dooley.
And we'll make sure to include all those in the show notes for the listeners.
Great. Well, thanks, Chris. I enjoyed this. It's been a great conversation and fun to find a fellow computer direct marketing veteran.
Thank you so much. We don't run across a whole lot of direct marketing veterans these days in computers.
Definitely.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Easy Prey podcast. Notes and a transcript of this episode with Roger Dooley can be found at easyprey.com/67.